Welcome to My Weekly Mixtape, a podcast that takes the classic mixtape approach to building a modern playlist. I'm your host, Brian Colburn. Today marks 95 episodes of My Weekly Mixtape, and while I've posted up a cover song dive bonus episode focused on Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' Refugee, coupled with the fact that I've talked about him on countless episodes prior to this, I've yet to record a full Tom Petty episode, which is absolutely criminal as far as I'm concerned. So what better time than now to remedy that? And with that said, I couldn't be more delighted to welcome this week's guest curator, Kevin Brown, host of the Tom Petty Project podcast. Kevin, thanks so much for joining me, man.
Yeah, thanks so much. I've found you recently after you reached out, and I've been enjoying getting back into the back catalogue. I loved the Refugee episode. I heard a couple of versions on there that I'd never heard before, and especially the Lullaby one. I was like, this is so super cool. I could see why people would hate it, but I love it. So
that is awesome. So as a first-time guest on the show, I'd like to start by asking you, what does the word mixtape mean to you?
It means my entire youth. I mean, that's all I did as a kid, right? Is make mixtape, tape things off the radio, tape things from vinyl or from other people's cassettes. You were talking about this with someone about this is how we shared music back in the old days before the internet. This is how music propagated among friend groups. And then also it means to me, you know, not getting laid because I put Foxtrot, put Supper's Ready from Foxtrot on a mixtape for a young lady who wasn't into 23-minute prog rock. So I was like, okay, well, you know, lesson learned.
Well, tonight, you and I are curating the ultimate Tom Petty playlist, which consists of 16 studio albums, if you want to count the Heartbreakers, along with his solo work, his pairs of Mudcrutch and Traveling Wilburys albums, live albums, box sets, greatest hits compilations, EPs, and so much more. And you and I are going to have to whittle that down to 20 songs. Now, to put that into even more perspective, his massive selling 1993 Greatest Hits album has 18 songs on it. And you and I could easily just rattle off those songs one by one and make a case for a killer Tom Petty playlist because it worked back in 1993 and it could work again in 2024. But if I know your fandom and I think about my fandom, that's not going to be the case. So how did you approach picking your bank of songs to choose from this evening?
It was really difficult. I mean, even picking 20 would be hard. And so when you only get half, when you're only building 10, and you got to then wonder about, well, what's the other person going to pick and how are we going to marry these up? It is tricky. So the approach I took was I wanted a blend of songs that people probably would know because this isn't a Tom Petty listenership, but then blended with some stuff that I think is super cool and that I want people to hear and to fall in love with at the same time. And I think that's how I attacked it, more or less.
For me, it was all about balance. There are some hit songs that I feel like you and I have to recognize in Tom's legacy, but I wanted to make this playlist something that maybe a newbie to Tom's music could take away something more than the songs that they've heard countless times on the radio. Give them a couple of things that they might not be familiar with and might introduce them to the world of Tom Petty's music for whatever band or artist or solo aspect that is. And hopefully between you and I, we cover a wide spectrum of what Tom Petty's music is all about.
Yeah, so it's going to be interesting because I've got 10 songs and I don't know what yours are going to look like. So, you know, I don't know if we've got a pecking order, we're going to have overlap, how the sequence is going to work. So I think the nice thing about a catalogue like Petty's is it's so strong start to finish that really you can cherry pick 2 or 3 songs off any of the albums and you come up with a pretty great list. So I'll be curious to see how many greatest hits end up on our final 20.
And my biggest fear is there are so many great albums that we're talking about here. I have a sneaking suspicion an album or two might get left out entirely and other Tom Petty fans might be like, whoa.
Well, guaranteed, people are going to say, well, how could you not include Song X or Songs Y? That's definitely going to happen in this playlist, right?
Oh, by God, by all means. So with that, let's not waste any more time and get right down to business. As I mentioned at the top of the show, Kevin and I will be curating the ultimate Tom Petty mixtape, and we'll use the old cassette deck approach. Kevin, as my special guest, will begin side A with his first song choice, and then I'll add a song that I feel best follows up that choice. We'll then flip-flop choosing songs until we've mapped out 10 songs for side A. We'll then give our mixtape a proverbial flip, and we'll map out side B, only this time I'll kick things off with Kevin choosing second. And our overall goal for this episode is to craft the best Tom Petty mixtape possible through only 20 songs. At the end of the show, you could take our conversation to the next level by visiting the episode page at myweeklymixtape.com to give our final mixtape a listen via the embedded playlist. And if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. There you can find ad-free episodes of the show, gain early access to upcoming episodes, chime in on future topics, become a guest curator, and so much more. And a few of the Patreon mixtapers chimed in with the songs they would use to kick things off tonight, and I want to give a quick shout out to a few of those. Philip Bergman chimed in saying, and I quote, "I'm nervous about this one, Brian. I feel this is holy ground for you, which means if I answer wrong, you'll cancel my Patreon membership." I won't do that, but as he was the guest on the Weird Al episode, he felt duty-bound to start with Stop Dragging My Heart Around, though he'd thoroughly enjoy kicking it off with Learning to Fly. But he also wanted to include the Traveling Wilburys cover of Nobody's Child and close it out with the all-star jam that Petty was a part of on My Back Pages for the Bob Dylan 30th anniversary concert to display the echelon of musicians that Petty is a part of. Sean Goff chimed in saying that this was kind of an easy choice for him to start his mixtape off, as Refugee gets him amped up every time. But with that being said, finishing said mixtape with any other cut is not so easy. Brandon from Virginia chimed in saying he was introduced to Tom by the You Got Lucky video, and he thinks that's the perfect opening song, and he also loves Mike Campbell's solo in the song, applauding its haunting sound. Chad Lamassa said he can't decide between American Girl and Mary Jane's Last Dance, and Seeker is also undecided between Don't Come Around Here No More and Stop Dragging My Heart Around. Once again, if you'd like to chime in for future My Weekly Mixtape episodes, come join the fellow mixtapers at patreon.com/myweeklymixtape. Now, Kevin, with all of those chime-ins out of the way, I'm officially pressing the record button on our mixtape and passing the mic to you. How will you kick off the ultimate Tom Petty playlist?
Well, you got to open with something that's immediately memorable, immediately hummable, sticks in your brain. So I think for me, the opening chords of Listen to Her Heart from You're Gonna Get It, the second album, quintessential 70s Petty. I think it's even more so than Refugee for me. So I'm going to Listen to Her Heart. They opened with quite a few shows, live shows with that one. Comes out the gate hard. It hits them hard. It hits them quick. I think it's the perfect opener.
I think You're Gonna Get It introduces the punkier side, at least across the album as a whole, for Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. And I say punk, and I don't mean like Ramones punk, but there is definitely a punk spirit to that album as a whole. The single reached number 59 on the Billboard US Hot 100 and number 66 on the Canadian RPM Top Singles chart. A big hit for them. Obviously, like you said, opened many shows. I was lucky enough to catch the 2010 Mojo tour as it rolled through New Jersey, and this was the opening track on it. Absolutely incredible way to kick things off. And I think to follow that up, let's stay with the stuff people know. Let's lure them in. Let's take the fishing rod, cast the lure way out into the water, and lure people in with songs they're familiar with. So I'm going to go off of his 1989 solo album, Full Moon Fever, and I'm going to go with Running Down a Dream. Reached number 23 on the Billboard US Hot 100 and Canadian RPM Top Singles charts. Number 1 on the Billboard US Album Rock Tracks chart. Number 68 on the Australia ARIA Singles chart. And number 55 on the UK Singles chart. This year alone has seen 2 cover versions of Running Down a Dream get dropped, being Luke Combs from the Petty Country compilation and female blues rockers Larkin Poe, who did a gender-flipped version for the Bad Monkey soundtrack, which is absolutely killer. I love Larkin Poe. If you haven't heard them, please remedy that. They're incredible. But I do want to bring up my personal favorite performance of this song, because not only did it win me $20, I was lucky enough to see the New York Giants win Super Bowl 42 against the undefeated New England Patriots. Sorry to my New England family. However, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers were the halftime show. And during the second quarter, they kept making announcements. Stay tuned for the halftime show where Tom Petty will be playing these hits: American Girl, I Won't Back Down, Free Fallin', Running Down a Dream. So I called my father and bet him $20 that I could guess Tom Petty's set list in chronological order. Needless to say, I won, but he called me at the beginning of the third quarter saying, I should have known to never gamble with you because you'll only gamble on a sure thing. But how great was that performance? Unfortunately, we were behind Tom Petty and the band. So when they lowered the screen, we basically saw the sparkles. If I have a picture of it, I'll post it on the episode page. But one of the most memorable Tom Petty concerts for me, because I got to combine my love of football and my favorite artist of all time all in one day. Kind of greatest day ever.
That's awesome, man. So would you, and it was a great performance too, and a great live band performance, right? No miming, no lip syncing, no other guests. They didn't need anyone. Those 4 songs can support a halftime show in its entirety. Is that the greatest ever solo in the outro of a song in the fade out? It's between that one and Sultans of Swing for me, maybe, I think.
I say Sultans of Swing usually hits that mark for me just because, God, Mark Knopfler is just a friggin' genius. But Mike Campbell, I would say, goes down as one of the most underrated guitarists of all time. I really think that people overlook the brilliance of Mike Campbell, and I think we're going to talk about that a lot tonight. At least in my songs, we are.
I suspect so, yeah. I mean, underrated, like we talk about that a lot, right? He wasn't underrated by his peers, because you just look at the laundry list of people he wrote with, played for, supported, went and worked with. The people in the industry and the people who are at his level, everyone respected Campbell, right? And everyone still does. And it's great to see him back out on the road now with the Dirty Knobs. Still doing it. Still 74 years old, and he's still kicking ass. I love Mike.
Absolutely. And, that's the problem, that people, when they say rattle off your top 10 guitarists, I feel like he should be included in that conversation.
And he wouldn't have been for me until I started this podcast, until I really started getting deep on this guy's a musician. Because like you're talking about, he writes for the song always. And I mean, this might be an outlier on Running Down a Dream where he just hunkers over the guitar and Tom Petty says that him and Jeff Lynne were just staring at each other like, is this guy really doing this for real right now? Because that song was supposed to be about 45 seconds shorter, right? But they said, well, we've got to include all of this because it's gold. So,
of course, by all means. So we've got 2 massive hits to kick things off. Listen to Her Heart, Running Down a Dream. Where do we go from here?
Well, I'm going to go with the Queen adage of deafen 'em and blind 'em to start a show. So I think we're going to hit them with one more big one before we get into something a little bit deeper. And I think The Waiting is as perfect as a pop song as Waterloo Sunset, Somebody to Love, Dancing Queen, all those great pop songs. I put The Waiting up there. It's one of those lightning in a bottle moments for me. Great riff, great hook, killer chorus. And then everything coalesces perfectly. And I love we just had the new documentary that came out. I don't know if you saw that, but he remembers calling up Jimmy Iovine and saying, Jimmy, I wrote a song. But it wasn't easy because he just had that riff, right? And he's playing it over and over and over again. And he said that people would bang on the wall and say, don't play that anymore.
Well, I think those people probably regret it because thankfully he did continue playing that riff and it turned into a song that reached number 19 on the Billboard US Hot 100, number 1 on the Billboard Top Tracks chart, number 6 on the Canadian RPM Top Singles chart, and number 27 on the New Zealand Singles chart. It's an absolute fan favorite. I mean, it's a top 20 hit. I feel like that doesn't do the song justice. It's an absolute staple. And cover versions, there are just so many of them. Linda Ronstadt doing a folk Americana version for her 1995 album Feels Like Home. In 2015, Natalie Imbruglia, if you remember the song Torn from the 90s, does a breezy island-like rendition on her Male album. And I'm going to mention that Bad Monkey soundtrack again, and probably a couple other times tonight. Marcus King reinvented the song as a piano gospel ballad. Very moving, very emotional, really makes you pay attention to the lyrics. And to me, for this song to be able to be interpreted in 3 different ways like that, similar to what I said with Refugee, that I did that episode with 7 different versions, the song has to be strong to make that possible. And The Waiting is one of his strongest. So absolutely love the pick. You did 2 Heartbreakers tracks. I don't know why, but I'm going to stick solo here. And I'm going to keep the hit fest going one more time. Technically, you could say this is a lesser hit. I'm going to use big quote marks when I say that, because it reached number 2 on the Billboard mainstream chart and number 72 on the Australia ARIA chart, and number 88 on the UK singles chart. So it's not necessarily a massive hit, but to me, it's a song that, coming out of The Waiting and the songs that we've had leading up to it, I just want to keep the pedal to the metal and go You Wreck Me from my favorite Tom Petty album, 1994's Wildflowers. And once again, there's been covers of this one. George Strait contributed a live version for that Petty country compilation, and The War on Drugs released a fairly faithful rendition for the Bad Monkey soundtrack. But my favorite version, besides Tom's, of course, is Taking Back Sunday's punk-infused take from 2009's Covered, a Revolution in Sound compilation. Because, like I said earlier, Tom Petty has that punk spirit. And hearing Taking Back Sunday amp that punk spirit up just a little bit more and make it work without going overboard and keeping the spirit of the song alive, I absolutely love it. And this song, to me, it's just... Wildflowers is such a diverse, eclectic masterpiece of an album. This, to me, takes his 70s era and brings it into the 90s. So You Wreck Me to follow up The Waiting.
Yeah, and does it on the back of another phenomenal riff. How, when you think about that, it's 1994 when this song comes about. So rock and roll's been around for 20 plus years, 25, 30 years maybe. How has that descending 3-chord riff never been used? You know what I mean? Like, it's so epic and so brilliant, but so simple. And again, that's one thing that the Heartbreakers are really, really good at. And if you listen to or talk to a lot of musicians and songwriters, they say that you learn simplicity from Tom Petty, and simplicity isn't easy. But boiling something down and taking away until you've got just exactly what the song needs. And I think that the drum pattern, the guitar riff, and that bass line as well in You Wreck Me, so simple, it just follows the root notes, but it's so, so effective. And then, of course, that one change from rock to wreck. You Rock Me, it's a little bit Kiss. It's a little bit on the nose, let's change it. It doesn't work, and Tom goes away and finds Wreck, and then, of course, it becomes the song that we all know and love.
Yeah, I couldn't picture it as You Rock Me. That would have been way down the Kiss. And you know what? For Kiss, if Kiss did You Wreck Me, I'd almost be disappointed on that end of the spectrum, too. So I feel like everyone stayed in their lanes with this one.
Absolutely.
So we got 4... I'd say massive crowd pleasers. If this was a Tom Petty concert, the roof would already be blown off the building. Where are we going from here?
Well, we're going to go to the last album, the last Heartbreakers album, at least anyway, Hypnotic Eye. I'm going to a song that features one of my favorite Steve Ferroni drum patterns, Fault Lines, which has got that, Steve Ferroni really puts the boss in bossa nova. And he's got the little bossa nova beat that he's keeping. He's just keeping it on the ride bell, and everything else is fairly 4/4. So that little syncopation between what he's doing with his right hand and his left, I just love that. And Steve Ferroni, again, is another guy who I think is massively underrated, but he's played with everyone. He comes in, he nails every single song he plays on second, third take. He'll give you 3 or 4 different looks, 3 or 4 different options. Pick your favorite one because they're all going to be amazing. And some of the lyrics in this song too. See those fault lines laid out like landmines. It's hard to relax. And then in the last verse, on the high wire, above the wildfire, an old acrobat, on faulty cable, still he's able not to fall flat. So that's, to me, has always been him talking about an aging rock star who's kind of, there's danger below because there's all these acts coming up below you and you got to kind of stay on your toes. And yet Petty did manage to rise above into 2014's Hypnotic Eye and produce another masterwork with his last album.
Yeah, bittersweet album to me because I think the album is an absolute masterpiece. I might catch some flack for this, but this might be a top 3 album for me. Maybe it is the bittersweet fact that it is their swan song, and I listen to it with a little bit of awe because this is the last output officially as a band. Obviously, there's the vaults, and I'm sure we're going to see plenty of material coming down the pike over the years. So I feel like the Tom Petty cup is always going to be filled. but with him on this earth, this was the last album. So to me, it's what a strong statement for an album. This is the only song on Hypnotic Eye that Tom didn't write on his own. Mike Campbell co-wrote this one with him. Yep. And I have to agree 100% about Ferrone's drums on it. That ride cymbal, just like the name of the album, it's hypnotic. It just draws you in. It was nominated for a 2015 Grammy Award for Best Rock Album. And I think, I love Beck, but Tom should have won this one. Morning Phase, which is a great album, did take home the prize, but I feel like Hypnotic Eye is a stronger album. Just apples to oranges. But Tom Petty's my favorite artist, so I know I'm coloring that with a little bit of favoritism, and I'm totally okay with that. I actually had Playing Dumb in my bank of songs for tonight, and I'm not sure if we're going to get to Hypnotic Eye twice because we only have 20 songs, but even though that song is only featured on the vinyl version of the album, how great is it that that song is so stellar that I even put it in my bank and you can't get it on the CD version? That's how great of an album Hypnotic Eye is.
And you got to go buy vinyl, folks. And I don't, we were talking about mixtapes here, and of course we all have playlists. And I do still have mixtapes. I've still got cassettes kicking around. But if I'm going to sit down and listen to music these days, if I'm not driving around or I'm not running or walking, I put vinyl. I put a piece of plastic on a turntable, man, and I spin it up. And, Hypnotic Eye is one of those albums that you got to listen to front to back because it is superb. And, man, what about the guitar tone on Fault Lines?
It's unbelievable.
If Dirty Axle Grease was a guitar tone, that's what it would sound like. It's incredible, just dirty.
And the one thing I like about Fault Lines is it truly sticks out on that album as an outlier, that bossa nova sound you talked about. And I think that's what I'm going to stick with for my next pick. And I'm going to go with a song that I think is another outlier song from Tom Petty on an album where maybe it feels like it doesn't quite fit in. But again, yes, I am going to go with a hit here. But when you get Dave Stewart of the Eurythmics and Tom Petty writing together, you get the lead single from 1985's Southern Accents, Don't Come Around Here No More. And this song was apparently written about Stevie Nicks' breakup with Joe Walsh. I'm not getting into the TMZ part of all this, but it reached number 12 on the Billboard US Hot 100, number 2 on the US Album Rock Tracks chart, number 20 on the Canadian Top 100 Singles, number 50 on the UK Singles chart, and hit number 61 in Australia, number 42 in New Zealand. Worldwide hit. In 2020, Rolling Stone ranked it number 3 on their list of the 50 greatest Tom Petty songs. For me personally, this song is all about the Alice in Wonderland inspired music video. This is when I was glued to MTV as a kid, and getting to go to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and get a photo with the hat from the video was truly a highlight of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame for me, because I remember staring at that hat and watching that video just completely mesmerized by it.
What is going on? Like, what is this?
Exactly. And like Fault Lines, this song has a different sound from what you'd expect from a typical quote unquote Tom Petty song. Yet I couldn't picture this song performed by anybody else but Tom. So even though it pivots from what the sound is across Southern Accents as an album, I couldn't picture Southern Accents without it. And I have to end by also giving another shout out to Patreon Mixtaper Seeker, who also chimed in with this one, but Don't Come Around Here No More. I'm actually surprised that Dave Stewart and Tom didn't do more after this, because it just works so well together.
Well, I mean, the 3 songs on Southern Accents, we're talking about an album there that was originally supposed to be a concept album about the South. There was just, Rebels, Trailer, all these single words, Spike, all these single words that Tom had been putting together and trying to write around the experiences of living in the South, and, predominantly a white South. So this kind of derails it. And Dave Stewart coming in, and they go buy rhinestone suits, and they're cutting around town, and they're drinking and helling it up. So it definitely is, Southern Accents is, what would the word, not a train wreck, but in terms of consistency, there's no consistency on that album, right? It's incoherent is the word I would use. It's brilliant, and its highs are high, but it's just very confusing and very difficult to listen to as an album. I should shout out quickly, I don't know if you've ever read Michael Washburn's brilliant book on Southern accents. If you haven't checked it, it's part of the 33 and a Third series. I had him on my podcast. Fantastic writer, a brilliant sort of essay about how does Southern accents stand up, and especially sort of the subsequent tour with the Confederate imagery and that kind of stuff. Very, very interesting, very, very cool. And he's obviously a huge Petty fan. But my favorite version of this song is definitely the version from the Take the Highway tour, and you can find this online. I'll put a link in my episode notes when I do my when I push this out on my shares. When Mike Campbell starts out playing that guitar, puts it on the guitar stand, and it's got that big delay on it, so they've got the loop going. It's on the loop. Then he gets the next guitar, that bouzouki thing that he plays. Then he gets his third guitar. Then Tom walks down the stairs, opens the chest, puts the hat on, and the song begins. I mean, as theatre and as performance, doesn't get any better than that.
Not at all. So what are we going to follow up Don't Come Around Here No More with?
Well, I'm going deep again. This is a song that I think pretty much every Petty fan or everyone I know really loves, and it's again getting a bit more attention because of the Long After Dark re-release and the subsequent documentary that they've released. Straight Into Darkness.
Nice.
Not just one of the great Petty deep cuts, I think it's one of the great Petty songs. And I almost went with either Change of Heart or You Got Lucky from Long After Dark, because I love those two songs too, but I wanted to get a little bit broader, and I think, I believe the good times are over. I don't believe all this is gone. The end sort of verse, everyone sort of latches onto that. But for me, the thing that struck me about this song really hard when I first heard it on my re-listen through for the podcast was, wait a minute, that piano intro and the tempo and the chord structure, that's King of Pain. Sting borrowed this. He lifted that little intro for King of Pain, and it's brilliant, and I love it. But it's definitely sort of influenced by this song. And it's one of the first songs in the Heartbreakers catalogue where Benmont does really open that song with a piano phrase rather than it being a guitar lick. So yeah, Straight Into Darkness, fantastic song.
Could not agree more. And this is one where I actually, when I was listening to this album as the re-release came out and kind of really diving into the French TV version, which, holy shit, the clarity on that TV recording. Think about this. This is like 1982 TV. The clarity between the instruments, the separation on those French TV recordings is absolutely brilliant. And if you listen to it on Blu-ray, you feel like they're in the room with you.
Yeah.
But Straight Into Darkness, how the hell did this song not reach the stratospheric heights of The Waiting and everything else? And why wasn't it included on the 1993 Greatest Hits comp or the Best of Everything compilation albums? It's overlooked in the catalog. And I'm glad that we're representing it tonight because to me, it's an absolute classic.
And then there's another book tie too, if you're ever interested in reading a book by an author named Megan Volpert. She talks about how this song actually, she credits it with saving her life. She was standing on a train station platform, feeling like she was almost at the end of her rope, listening to music. This song comes on, and when that last verse kicks in, it gave her just that little bit of sort of confidence to step back from the ledge, step back away, step out, and just sort of give herself a little bit of time to think. And she's, gone on from strength to strength from there. So music does have healing properties, and we overstate that. I think we're overstating it sometimes, but it's really true sometimes.
No, it's 100% true for me. I've gone through a lot this year. I had heart surgery earlier this year, and I'll be honest, music is a huge part, besides obviously the important aspect of my family being by my side. But when they weren't there and I was trying to go to sleep at night, music was the thing that helped keep me strong and guide me through it. And I listened to a lot of Tom Petty during my recovery because Tom Petty's music, even in the darkest moments, still finds a way to hit me in the feels and put a smile on my face. And I think following up Straight Into Darkness, I'm going to go with another single, and I'm using quote marks because it technically was a single. And I'm going to also file this under how the hell was this not a massive hit? And I'm going to go off of 1991's Into the Great Wide Open. I think it's just like Straight Into Darkness, one of Tom Petty's most underrated tracks. It's a fan favorite. They've been playing it live for years. We're going to go with King's Highway. There's a reason that country and rock artists name drop Tom Petty. There's that phrase, listening to Tom Petty on the radio. I could probably rattle off 90 country songs that say that line. And if I were to guess what song they were talking about, I think it's King's Highway. Because to me, how can you not put that song on and not want to put the top down in your car and drive and just have the breeze in your hair? It's the perfect summer road trip song. Hell, James Bay covered it for the Cars 3 soundtrack, obviously about driving in cars. But this to me is a perfect Tom Petty song that gets overshadowed by the brilliant title track with the Johnny Depp video and Learning to Fly, which was the big lead single from the album. I feel like this should have gotten a lot more love than it did. So following up Straight Into Darkness, I feel like they go really well back and forth.
One Into the Great Wide Open is such a great driving album, front to back,
It
right?
is.
I mean, when you get into that one too, you sort of, I think it's easy to overlook that one as well because there's a couple of really big hitters on it. But some of the deep, because Dark of the Sun, Mike Campbell's guitar solo in that one is one of my favorite things he ever did with 6 strings and a fretboard. Two Gunslingers is on that record. It's
brilliant.
just front to back, it's stacked. And I've said on my podcast before that I think that one, it's not Full Moon Fever. I think it's Into the Great Wide Open that actually signals the start of the second half of Petty's career, because there's something that happens with his songwriting, specifically his lyric writing on Into the Great Wide Open. And King's Highway has that sort of wistfulness and that sort of nostalgia to it, which almost as if, okay, I'm just going to get this one last time out of my system and then we go forward. So there's got that little turning point to me that I always think about.
And I'll tell you, to me, All or Nothing is Tom Petty's James Bond theme song that never got released in the James Bond movie.
Love it.
All right, so we have a 1-2 punch of, I'd say, underrated, quote-unquote, singles if they were officially, Straight Into Darkness and King's Highway. We each have one more song to close out side A. What do you got?
Well, I want to go live because the Heartbreakers were a superb live outfit, one of the best cover bands of all time, one of the great American live bands. And I also wanted to go with something that wasn't released on an album. So I'm going to hit you with the live anthology version of Melinda, the co-write with Ben Montez.
Nice.
So that's my killing 2 birds with 1 stone there. Mike's lead playing on this song is amazing. Ben Mont's piano. We talk about Mike Campbell being underrated. Ben Montench is the ultimate color commentator, right? He's the ultimate guy who just sits in the background and then throws in every now and again. This one, he takes the lead for a good sort of 1.5, 2-minute boogie-woogie jazz kind of stride piano solo that's just out of this world and reminds you, if you need Ben Mont to tear it up, Ben Mont can tear it up.
And he does also on the 2004 Soundstage presents live Blu-ray DVD. It's a shorter version. Personally, I think the live anthology one is the ultimate. It's Ben Mont's opus as far as I'm concerned. The sound that he gets out of that grand piano for 8 minutes is, he goes from breathtaking to spellbinding to mind-blowing. And it's just like, what's happening here? And then Mike Campbell, that guitar part is so eerie and haunting. I actually have a question for you because I've read arguments about this online and I want to get your 2 cents on this. Some people have said that lyrically this song is about Tom going to visit a prostitute, and other people said that this is a song about murder. Is the $400 his travel costs? The cost for Melinda? The cost to buy a weapon? There's also that lyric, and one dark night, I'm going to crawl through a window. Is that to sneak around so him and the prostitute don't get caught? Or is there something more nefarious here? Because for me, I don't see Tom as the dark, murderous type, but you could take those lyrics in 2 different directions, which just show what a strong songwriter he is, especially because of the arguments I've seen. So I'm curious what you think about that.
This is the beauty of so much of Petty's writing lyrically. I always describe this as what he does is he puts a brilliant line drawing in front of you, but then he lets you color it in. Right? All the sort of the interpretation of what does he mean, he leaves it ambiguous enough. I mean, you look at something like Something Big. There's something, you know what the story is, but you don't know what the ending is, and you don't really know all the little parts of that song. Spike is similar, where it's quite narrative, and you've got this very definite character, but you don't really know exactly what's going on. So this one, again, could be any one of those things. I like the idea of the murder. I like the hitman angle on that. That's kind of cool. I haven't read that one. But I wanted to ask you, when we talk about original songs, because this was an original composition, a co-write between Tom and Ben, that never was, or we don't have at the moment, a studio recording of it. And so it fits in the same, there's 2 others that I can think of, Black Leather Woman, which would be from roughly around about the same time as this one too, and then Dog on the Run, which was from the official live leg, released after the first album, we don't have studio recordings. And you think, why was this never recorded? Melinda especially, out of all three of those, this one you think, this was crying out for a studio version.
I couldn't agree more, and I almost wonder if, because Benmont, I have read that he used to cringe whenever he saw Melinda on the set list because he knew he had to bring the fire at that point, and he could take that song either to stratospheric heights, or if he doesn't hit it the right way, it could fall apart quickly. So that one always gave him a little bit of nerves and a little bit of pause. God, I really hope to me, that should have been either on the playlist box set or the American Treasure, but I really have a feeling the vault is deep, and I think it's coming. I just don't know when.
I hope so, yeah. And it's one of those weird ones too, because it sits in, I think it's before Mojo, but it wouldn't have fit on The Last DJ, but I don't know if it was written in The Last DJ sessions, but it doesn't really fit thematically with The Last DJ. So it could have just been one of those where we don't have a home for this. We don't really have a record that we can put this on, because that happens too sometimes, right? Where if Highway Companion is the next solo album, definitely doesn't fit on there, and that's a complete solo, the only album on which there's no co-writes, so it sort of doesn't fit on there either. So it might have just been one of those that got lost in the shuffle too. So
yeah, and I'm gonna stick with the live anthology. I want to go live too, and I want to do something that I talked about, how cover bands reinterpret Tom's songs. But I want to take this moment to talk about how Tom can reinterpret Tom's songs. And I am going to go from their 2006 Bonnaroo Music and Arts Festival performance and go with the slowed down, nearly gospel-esque version of Learning to Fly that they took with them into the 2010 tour. Only on this version, they got somebody named Stevie Nicks doing background vocals, the unofficial female member of the Heartbreakers. We talked about Benmont's piano playing on Melinda. The grand piano solo in Learning to Fly is just, it brings a tear to my eye. And then I'm going to give a little spoiler. Episode 66, the Ultimate Spellbinding Songs playlist, I chose this one. Yeah. Along with Ben from Records Revisited podcast. And as much as I love the original from Into the Great Wide Open, this version gives me goosebumps every time I hear it. At the end of the song, where the crowd is just singing the chorus over and over again, and Tom has his arms out and he's doing the preacher thing, kind of just doing his vocal runs over it. It's literally Heartbreakers Church in musical form. And I love this version so much. And I think to close out side A, it's just a beautiful way to kind of put an exclamation point at the end of an amazing side of music.
I love too, though, your take on it's a cover version of your own song. I think that's the perfect way of putting it. I've got a very good friend of mine who's a working musician, sound engineer, producer, and he says that that's quite often, the really good bands at least, you record it in the studio and then you figure out how to cover it. So you cover your own song, because live, you got to change things up. And of course, Jeff Lynne's production style was, we record one instrument at a time. There's 68 million guitar tracks on that record all over the place, right? So you can't do a lot of that stuff live. But this one, when it's slowed down, I mean, it does just take it to another emotional and spiritual level that the studio version doesn't hit. The studio version is a great pop song. This is an anthem once he does it in this configuration, right?
Could not agree more. And that, Mixtapers, concludes side A of the ultimate Tom Petty mixtape, which consists of Listen to Her Heart from You're Gonna Get It, Running Down a Dream from Full Moon Fever, The Waiting from Hard Promises, You Wreck Me from Wildflowers, Fault Lines from Hypnotic Eye, Don't Come Around Here No More from Southern Accents, Straight in the Darkness from Long After Dark, King's Highway from Into the Great Wide Open, and then a 1-2 shot from the live anthology of Melinda and Learning to Fly. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've discussed in this mix through the playlist embedded on the episode page. And now to start side B, I'm actually gonna tap into something I said at the end of side A. We had Stevie Nicks, the unofficial female member of the Heartbreakers, and Patreon mixtapers Philip Berkman and Seeker both chimed in with this one, and I have to go there. 1981's Stevie Nicks album Belladonna, Stop Dragging My Heart Around, the duet of duets. It was also included on the 2008 re-release of Tom Petty's Greatest Hits, which replaced their cover of Thunderclap Newman's Something in the Air. I don't know why they did that, but I think they both could have been included on the re-release, but maybe it was something with the licensing. I have no idea. And it was also included on the 2019 The Best of Everything compilation. Stevie and Tom's voices are just magic together. They should have done more. Obviously, you got Insider from Hard Promises, The Learning to Fly. I feel like there should have been more. I feel like we got cheated out of more between the two of them. The song hit number 3 on the US Billboard Hot 100, number 10 in Australia, number 5 on Canada's Top Singles chart, and also charted in the Netherlands, New Zealand, South Africa, and the UK. Another worldwide hit. I mean, cover versions, it's not a cover, it's a parody, but anytime Weird Al gets involved, I got to mention it. Stop Dragging My Car Around, the only time that he really messed around with Tom Petty in a way. And I will say Lady A does a incredible version on the Petty Country Tribute album because they do 3-part harmony on the vocals, which adds a different layer of depth to it. And I know I've mentioned that one a lot, but hell, it was probably one of my favorite country albums of the year. So yeah, Stop Dragging My Heart Around to kick off side B.
And I think what's always incredible with Petty and Nicks together is that they're both so distinctive and so unique vocally that sometimes that doesn't work, right? Sometimes if you don't get the right blend, but for some reason those two together, they just know how to sing with each other. And I love the video for Insider when you can see them watching each other just so they can get the phrasing exactly right. And of course, when Stevie comes on stage and sings this with him live. And the other cool thing about Insider is a different song, obviously, but they never played that live without Stevie Nicks. And same thing,
Why
I don't
would
think,
you? Yeah.
Well, you can't do it, right? But I think Stevie does do Stop Dragging My Heart Around. But I do think it's interesting, right? The Insider was the song that he actually wrote for Stevie. Stevie came in, sang it, and said, yeah, dude, I can't take this from you. I can tell you don't want to give it to me. Is there anything else you can give to me? And so the Heartbreakers already recorded Stop Dragging My Heart Around for Hard Promises. And Tom said, well, what about this one? They get in, we've got the footage of them singing it and figuring out their vocal parts together in the new documentary. And it's just like, okay, well, yeah, that actually, Stop Dragging My Heart works way better on Belladonna than Insider would have done, in my opinion.
I completely agree. And then also to this day, I know there's a studio version. It's on her Enchanted box set, but Stevie does a beautiful version of Free Fallin'. I mean, the way those two are intertwined over the years, you usually pair Stevie Nicks with Fleetwood Mac, obviously, because that's where her legacy was carved before solo. But to me, her legacy with the Heartbreakers is just as strong, even though it's not as prominent.
Absolutely. And, Mike worked with her on 3 or 4 different studio albums after Belladonna. Benmont, I think, has played on almost every album she's ever put out. So that relationship with the Heartbreakers, just musically, there was always the scurrilous rumors that her and Tom had something going on, which they didn't. But musically, they're just their hand in glove, right? They just fit together perfectly.
Well, what are you going to follow up Stop Dragging My Heart Around with?
Well, I'm kind of following your lead here, and I'm going to take us away from the Heartbreakers. And I'm going to take us away from solo, and I'm going to go to the supergroup of all supergroups, Traveling Wilburys, but I'm not going for one of the big ones from Volume 1. I'm going to hit you with Cool Dry Place from Volume 3.
Awesome.
So I had to pick that one. I mean, End of the Line is one of my favorite songs ever recorded. I love that tune. Orbison's voice on it is just majestic. You got the blend is perfect, the bounce of it, and the sort of the ease of it. Jim Keltner's drum part in that never hits a cymbal. But it's too easy to pick one of those. I think Cool Dry Place shows off Tom Petty's sense of humor. And that sort of interplay between him, Dylan, you can tell this is a co-write between the 4 of them at that point, and they're just having fun. Talking about old athletic shoes and DX7s and reverbs and things, all the moldy, and it's got such a relaxed, loose feel to it, and that warmth and that sense of humor that I think really underscored everything that the Wilburys did. And talk about, the Wilburys. I remember that was my entry into Petty. It wasn't Full Moon Fever. I'm sure I heard Full Moon Fever around the time, but I hadn't really latched on. But being a huge Beatles fan growing up, and my dad being a big Harrison fan especially, it was the Wilburys. And then, you look at it, it's okay, well, Bob Dylan I'm a huge fan of. It's got a Beatle in there. You got Roy Orbison, who's just elite level, sort of untouchable. And then Jeff Lynne, who, if you're English and you're an ELO fan, he's also on that level. Who's this Petty kid, this scruffy blonde Californian dude, right? At the table, and as you think, it was 37 when the Wilburys got together. But of course, as we know now, like he was every bit their equal in terms of songwriting, in terms of productivity and the contribution to the band. So, Cool Dry Place from Wilburys Volume 3.
It's funny, when they first came out, people were like, who are all these old guys? But if you think about what their ages were when these albums came out, they were not old at all. And I love the fact that you mentioned that these songs were written from a fun place, because from what I've read, both Handle with Care and Cool Dry Place were written based on, they were sitting in a room and they were stickers on a box. Handle with Care and Store in a Cool Dry Place. So coming from a place of humor, I also love the wink, wink, nudge, nudge reference to Jeff Lynne in the lyrics. I paid my first subscription, then I joined the Idle Race. Idle Race was Jeff Lynne's Electric Light Orchestra band.
Yep.
So that was them kind of like poking fun and having fun at the expense of the lyrics. And while Handle with Care will always be a personal highlight and favorite for me, I talked about that soundstage performance. They do an incredible version on that. That one was more of everybody getting a little bit of vocals in that. And I feel like Tom took front and center on Cool Dry Place. So I think for this playlist, this one makes more sense.
Okay, well, what are you following it with? Because we've had two now that aren't Heartbreakers songs. So are you getting us back to the Heartbreakers? Are we going solo? Where are we going?
I'm going to trifecta this and keep us outside of the Heartbreaker range, because for the true Tom Petty fans out there, if we don't touch on Mudcrutch, we're doing a disservice. So I'm going to go off the 2008 album. And first, I just want to say, me being a bass player, seeing Tom pick up the bass for an entire album, when I heard he was doing that, I'm like, okay, you've got my attention here. And when I first listened to the album, I'm like, what is this? Is this a country album? Is this Americana? What's going on here? And you could tell it's fun and eclectic, and it kind of fits in with where we're going with this side so far. Fun, eclectic, it's a different mix. I thought about going with Crystal River. And honestly, if I wanted to close out side A following up Melinda, considering that was showing Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers jamming, Crystal River is Mudcrutch jamming. But I couldn't resist the double shot of the live anthology for side A. So coming at a Cool Dry Place, I want to go with that same vibe, and I'm going to go with The Wrong Thing to Do.
Oh,
now,
nice.
To me, this feels like a Heartbreakers album, because you've got Mike Campbell, Ben Montench, and Tom all together. But when you bring in Tom Leadon and Randall Marsh to the sound, it is Mudcrutch. It does change. It's a different place. But there's something about the groove in The Wrong Thing to Do coming out of Cool Dry Place that I think just marries really well together.
It's got that very Stonesy blues rock, slightly country tinged sleaze to it.
It's swampy.
It's swampy, absolutely. It's a southern rock song, right? But again, it's got a bit of Keith in there, which Mike could bring to the table when he needed to. I do think that the Mudcrutch stuff does lean a little bit further country as well, right? I mean, Randall Marsh doesn't play like Steve Ferroni, definitely doesn't play like Stan Lynch. But let's talk for a second. I mean, for people who don't know this story, Mudcrutch was the precedent band to the Heartbreakers. That's the band that went out to LA to try to get a deal, got signed. Denny Cordell, who ended up sort of producing the first Heartbreakers album, signed him, but it just wasn't working out. And he kind of saw Petty more as a solo artist. So Mudcrutch disbands, the Heartbreakers end up forming. The rest, as they say, is history. But which arena rock star, at the height of their powers, in their right mind, competes with themselves and reforms the band before they hit the big time? I've never heard of anyone doing this. I've asked lots of people. No one can really point to anyone who did it at this level. Petty reforms Mudcrutch and just goes out and plays, small 1,200-seater amphitheaters, those kinds of things. And it shows that these guys love music first and foremost. It's not about the lifestyle. It's not about the money. It's about getting up with an instrument in front of a crowd and having that connection with a bunch of people through song. And I love that about Tom. I always have done.
And, Mudcrutch 2 is technically, we talked about Hypnotic Eye being the final Tom Petty album. Technically, Mudcrutch 2 is the final album that he put out. And I was debating going with I Forgive It All. But to go from Cool Dry Place to I Forgive It All, I felt like it would just go It would be, I Forgive It All crushes me. It is such a beautiful song. It puts a tear in my eye every time I hear it. And I felt like that would have been like skidding our playlist into a wall musically. And I wanted to kind of keep the fun, upbeat vibe going right now. So I do want to give a shout out to I Forgive It All because it's just a beautiful friggin' song. But to represent Mudcrutch tonight, the wrong thing to do.
Beautiful.
So we've got a couple of outliers here to start off side B. We're going deep on side B so far, except for Stop Dragging My Heart Around, which was a massive, massive hit.
Well, I'm keeping us deep. We're going to like I said, the only true solo album. Well, I should say true. It was still Tom Petty wrote every song on Highway Companion. And the only three people on that record are Tom, Mike Campbell, and Jeff Lynne. Tom plays drums on the album, front to back. So I'm going to keep us in a fun territory as well, and we're going to listen to Big Weekend.
Nice.
So again, it goes back to a little bit to what we've talked about already, where Petty had that brilliant knack of writing specifically, but with universality. So he's got, the line, they live in a brick house painted white and brown. That's the hook for me in that song, because it's like it's got a very specific visual image, and yet he fits it into this thing that we can all relate to about going back to maybe our hometown or someplace to visit friends, and, I'm going to hook up with them later, go and hit the bar. It's just a fun jam. I would love to play this live. Like, I've got my drum kit back here. You can see this is one I play all the time if I'm just sitting around on a Sunday afternoon doing nothing but jamming.
This song, to me, when you think about Highway Companion as a solo album, Jeff Lynne did 3 albums with Tom Petty: Full Moon Fever, Into the Great Wide Open, and Highway Companion. And I feel like they're 3 different statements. Normally you would think Jeff Lynne has a sound and a vibe and a production style, which you do hear on the Traveling Wilburys albums. You hear it on the ELO stuff. But for the 3 times he worked with Tom, you get 3 different experiences. Because I feel like Full Moon Fever is a vibe in and of itself, as is Into the Great Wide Open, as is Highway Companion. And if you're lucky enough to have the leather-bound deluxe edition of the CD version of Highway Companion, there's actually a really cool demo version of Big Weekend that's worth a listen if you haven't heard it.
Yeah.
To me, this song has this campfire Americana vibe to it. It's something that when the Petty Country album, I know I've mentioned it a lot tonight because it's still kind of hot on the tails this year with 2 Petty tributes coming out in the same year. People were saying, oh, country musicians playing Tom Petty music sounds wrong. I always wonder how far past the radio hits those people got. Yeah. Because when you dive into Tom Petty's catalog, it's always been woven in the fabric of his music. And Big Weekend to me is an example of that.
Absolutely. It's got a swing to it. It's got a groove. I mean, this is a country song. I mean, it's got Tom Petty's skin and bones on it, but it is a country song. I was going to say that Highway Companion, I love that sort of talking about the 3-pack with Jeff Lynne. Obviously, did 3 with Iovine, 3 with Rubin, 3 with Lynne, except Lynne's were broken up. But this is the least Jeff Lynne sounding album that I might have ever heard by anyone.
Ever.
Yeah, it has a live-ish feel to it that Jeff Lynne doesn't tend to go to, but I think it does show that's why he's a genius, because if the album needs this production aesthetic, we'll use that. If it needs this production aesthetic, we'll use that. And he gets it dead right on Highway Companion for me.
Yeah, he nails it. Well, coming out of that, I feel like now we are on to track 5. I feel like we need to balance the scale a little bit here. So we're going to go with another big hit. And being we're talking about Jeff Lynne and I've got this all up in my system right now, I'm going to go back to Full Moon Fever because this was the album that I'll never forget. My father brought it home, and for probably a month, we listened to this album over and over and over again. And I'm going to go with a song that reached number 12 on the Billboard US Hot 100, number 1 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock charts, number 5 on the Canada Top Singles chart, number 16 on the Australia ARIA chart, number 28 on the UK Singles chart, and also hit number 66 in West Germany, number 49 in New Zealand. Worldwide hit. One of the anthems. This is the song that's going to get everybody singing along, arm in arm together. Even on the album, the chorus of Tom, Jeff Lynne, Howie Epstein, and George Harrison singing the chorus to I Won't Back Down in harmony always puts a smile on my face. Their voices work so well together. You get a little bit of that Wilburys touch because of Harrison's voice being in the fold on this song. it just invites everybody to sing along. That's why they play it in stadiums. It's the stadium anthem. But on the flip side to those happier moments, it's also used in sadder moments and powerful moments, like the weeks after 9/11 when they played it at the America A Tribute to Heroes concert. Again, same song, same lyrics, but it just takes on a whole new meaning in that type of situation. So to me, I feel like it's an important song to include tonight just because of the fact, like Learning to Fly, it has that just perfect songwriting versatility. It's that I used the word a couple times, but I can't think of another word to describe it.
It is great songwriting. Right? I mean, that's what it comes down to, and that's, again, what I've learned through really digging into Petty's catalogue and digging into it critically too, right? Not just sort of listening as a fan or listening casually, but when you start dissecting things, there's a reason why these songs are as good as they are. It's because there's care and attention been taken over them. They've been laboured over in a way to make sure that they're as good as they can be. But like I said, all truly great songs can be played really pretty much any way you want. And if you've got the right sort of set of musicians or you've got the right angle on it and you can bring something new and unique to it, I think that's why it works in those types of situations, because it's not exactly the type of song you would think of in that. I mean, obviously the sentiment is there, but this is quite a big song. Like, it's got a big, like I said, it's anthemic. It's the song that the Gators sing between the third and fourth periods, you know, and you've got 70, 80,000 people singing this song. So it's about unity, and it is about sort of, you know, pushing back against oppression and those kinds of things. So you can see why it's a natural fit for that kind of situation, for sure. But I would have sworn to God you were giving us Free Falling. You were talking about anthemic, you were talking about Lynne. I was like, the Free Falling's coming. So
hell, honestly, if it were up to me, I would have also put You're So Bad in that mix, because to me, that was another just absolute classic. And coming out of Big Weekend, You're So Bad has that country vibe to it that really could have worked. But again, with I Won't Back Down, you get bands like Everclear that do kind of this 90s alternative punk version of it. And then you've got Eddie Vedder that sits down with an acoustic guitar on stage with Pearl Jam. Versatility, versatility, versatility. So what are you following up I Won't Back Down with?
Well, I want to rip your heart out a little bit more, and we're going to go to, you know, the album that was very difficult for Tom. This is when he was at his lowest point in his life. You know, his divorce had gone through. He was living out at the chicken shack on his own. He was isolated. But the songs we got for the album Echo, I think, are among some of his strongest. So we've got to go with the lead track from Echo, Room at the Top. You know, I mean, even if it's just that one line at the end, I love you, please love me. That sort of just beseeching you to, you know, it's devastating. You know, we all know those people in our lives who've been at that low moment, and all they really want is acceptance. All they want is that love and support. And so to hear it come through from an artist who's singing it from the bottom of his soul, when you get to that part of that song, it's tough, man. But I mean, again, that's juxtaposed, this beautiful lyric, against an unexpected, hard, jagged electric guitar riff that comes in halfway through that you don't expect. So again, that sort of originality and sort of approach to music that the Heartbreakers had, I don't see through most of the people's songwriting. I don't think anyone else would have done that and made that choice in this song. No,
and the fact that Tom refused to play the song after the Echo tour shows how hard it was for him. I looked it up on setlist.fm, so take this with a grain of salt. You never know how exact it is. But according to setlist.fm, the song was only played 39 times.
Yeah.
Which, that's not a lot if you compare it to any other song in the catalog. And I just mentioned Eddie Vedder doing I Won't Back Down. Eddie Vedder's version on the Bad Monkey soundtrack that came out in 2024 is truly one of the highlights of that album, because Eddie's able to bring that pain and that suffering out in his version. It's gut-wrenching and very emotional. And following that up, here's where I'm going to go deep, because I went with I Won't Back Down. This is as deep as I'm going to go. I don't think you could get much deeper than this cut, because this version, the studio version, because you mentioned Room at the Top, actually appears only on the German import CD single of Room at the Top, and a live version appears on 2011's Kiss My Amps album. I'm going to go with Sweet William. To me, it's easily Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers' most bluesy song. And yes, I'm comparing that to Mojo. I understand that Mojo leans very heavy on the blues. And I know there were people that were quote unquote surprised at the blues direction of Mojo. Anytime I hear someone say that, I immediately point at this song because this song is almost a decade earlier. And I said, I'm sorry, Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers dabbled in the blues long before Mojo. How Sweet William didn't appear on Mojo actually surprises me because I feel like it would have fit perfectly on the album. But we talked about how Ben Montench got his moment in the sun with Melinda on side A. And you talked about the guitar solo at the end of Running Down a Dream from Mike Campbell. To me, Sweet William is Mike Campbell's opus. He absolutely steals the show with the blistering guitar solos. And after the band just goes, bow, 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 bow. And then he just hits that guitar solo as if he's Angus Young, who was just set on fire. And it just shows a side to this band that they could rock like no other. And I adore this song. And again, I don't think it would have fit on Echo. It really wouldn't have.
No.
But I do think it would have fit on Mojo, and I'm shocked they didn't revisit it in some facets. So my deep, deep, deep pick of the night, Sweet William.
You wonder about that too, right? Because the Heartbreakers didn't do that very often, taking an old song and trying to, they did it with Surrender. They tried 3 different times. They recorded that a bunch of times because they knew there was a good song, that they just couldn't get it. But usually it was, okay, well, we tried that then, it doesn't fit there. And we talked about Melinda didn't fit anywhere and Black Leather Woman didn't fit anywhere. I think this is another one of those songs. It's like, okay, it definitely doesn't fit on Echo. We'll put it on the B-side because that'll be cool. But do you then recycle it, or do you try and rearrange it? I think as a signpost toward Mojo, you're absolutely right. And of course, anyone who went to any of those Fillmore shows, and obviously we have the box set now, if you want more signposts, if you think the Heartbreakers can't do blues, you're not paying attention. These guys were born in the blues, deep in the blues, right? That's who they listen to. So
you got a deep cut to come out of now, so you can go any direction with this.
Well, this, I always feel like this isn't a deep cut because it's, for my money, and I'll ask you the question, I think one of the greatest things Tom ever wrote, but it wasn't released as a single, so it kind of, and it sits at track 14 on Wildflowers, so a lot of people might miss this one, Crawling Back to You. I don't think any Tom Petty mixtape playlist, whatever conversation we're talking about, this has to be on there. It's one of the greatest things he ever wrote, and of course it's got that line in it, most things I worry about never happen anyway. That's just, it's just incredible.
You just saying the line made the hair on my arm stand up. The penultimate track. I mean, Wildflowers is my favorite Tom Petty album. I know that might sound cliche, but it is an absolute masterpiece. As somebody who struggled with anxiety over the years, talking about myself here, the line, I'm so tired of being tired, sure as night will follow day. And then, like you said, most things I worry about never happen anyway. That hits home for me. Yeah. And I'm not even 100% sure that he's even singing about anxiety there. But as far as I'm concerned, when I first heard that song in 1994 and I was in high school listening to it, he was singing to me about what I was feeling. Yeah. He reached me with this song. And it's a beautiful moment on the album. And it's lyrical perfection as far as I'm concerned. So I love it.
I mean, on an album, though, too, and I talked about this lots when I did the Wildflowers season, you talk about eclecticism. Wildflowers is wildly different. I mean, it's got peaks and troughs, and there's lots of different angles, there's lots of different types of songs. And It's Good to Be King. It sits in a similar tonal vein as this one, but Crawling Back to You, musically, again, is just perfection. And it's funny, when I started digging into this song, I always thought that little bit of noise at the beginning, I thought that was the orchestra pit warming up. But it's not. It's Ben Montench on that Mellotron. It's those little, but it's got that kind of reed patch on the Mellotron. So when I learned that, just adds that little bit of special sauce again. Like Wildflowers is a work of genius. It's my favorite album too, and I think it's one of the best albums ever recorded. Definitely my favorite sounding record of all time, and very different to Jeff Lynne, who had done the album before, Into the Great Wide Open. Jeff Lynne can't make Wildflowers. You don't get Wildflowers if it's still Jeff Lynne. And this song has so much emotional impact, and yet at the same time, the first 2 verses, we're talking about the chambermaid and the Indian, and we've got, this sidekick. So it kind of takes us all over the map in one song. So we get, again, the coup de grace at the end of the song. I'm so tired. Sure as night will follow day. Most things all that kind of imagery. It just wraps everything up in a nice little bow. And then, of course, the album finishes with Wake Up Time. So it was a 1-2 punch to finish an album. Peerless.
I mean, thank God they didn't, as much as I love the song, thank God they didn't close it with Girl on LSD. Let's just go with that.
That would have been a move.
I love that from the single of You Don't Know How It Feels. Believe it or not, I was actually shocked that the version on the cassette single to You Don't Know How It Feels and the CD single wasn't on the All the Rest box set. I actually had to go back to my CD single.
Yeah.
And that was, to me, that was shocking. I don't know why they put an alternate version, but not the version from the CD single. I'm going really deep and nerdy here on that. I apologize. But again, favorite album, that happens. Okay, we each have one song left here. We've gone deep. We've gone into outside bands. We've gone into other things. I did a whole episode about this, so I'll keep this brief, but 1979's Damn the Torpedoes, we haven't even touched on it yet. Refugee, number 15 on the Billboard US Hot 100, number 2 on the Canada's Top Singles chart, number 24 in Australia, 23 in Belgium, and number 3 in New Zealand. Tell me why you want to lay there and revel in your abandon. This is the song that introduced me to Tom Petty. Well, if you listen to that cover song dive episode, it's actually the Alvin and the Chipmunks version from Chipmunk Punk. But my father said, oh, you like this song, Brian? Maybe you'll like this version of it. And that's when my love for Tom Petty was born. So I would be remiss not to mention, if you're enjoying this Tom Petty episode, go check out the cover song dive episode, because I go into 7 different unique versions of Refugee. And yes, spoiler alert, one of them is Alvin and the Chipmunks, because because it's the song that got me, it introduced me to Tom Petty, like the Traveling Wilburys introduced you to Tom Petty. How the hell did Tom Petty not introduce either one of us to Tom Petty? That's what I want to know.
I love too, though, you shout out in that episode that, don't forget about Simon and Theodore, because they are Mike and Belmont in this equation. If Alvin is Tom, it's Alvin and the Chipmunks. It's one thing. Yeah, I mean, it's the song that really kicked him into that next level, right? I mean, they come off the back of some great American Girl and Breakdown and Listen to Her Heart and I Need to Know, come off those first 2 records. But this one, when Iovine comes in and really cleans up the studio sound and makes them sound professional and really gets them hitting hard. Refugee, and of course, obviously, it tortured Stan Lynch, the drummer, to death, because they did 57 takes or something on this song. But I think at the end of the day, you've got to look back and say it was worth it, surely, because what they ended up with is, again, a perfect take. And I think it was more or less live off the floor with some vocal harmony overdubs, but I think for the most part, that was the band playing that song live.
And you could feel it in that recording. There's so much energy, so much emotion. This is an end of the night song to get people rallied up and going. Yeah. So I felt like it's a perfect spot. Because it's a song that introduced me and it's my last pick of the night, I'm kind of leaving you to either close us on a Grand Slam hit song, or you might throw a curveball and take us real deep. Who the hell knows? What are you going to close with tonight?
Well, I almost went with the cover version. I was really close to going with Stories We Could Tell.
Oh,
from Pack Up the Plantation, because that's got that sort of good night, let's all go home. I'd get Tom and Stan to sit at the edge of the stage and just sing it on acoustic. But again, we're talking about Refugee. We talked about I Won't Back Down, some of those songs that have to be on a Tom Petty mixtape. And I'm going to close with this last song Tom Petty ever played live, American Girl. It's got to be on there, man. You've got to close out with this. And I think that ending, when you get the big rock ending and the big ba-dum, thank you, ladies and gentlemen, good night, lights go out, Tom and the band walk off stage, and then think about this. It's track 10 on their debut album. I honestly think that if they led the album with this song, if you go American Girl Breakdown, I don't think this sits at the bottom of a closet in MCA Studios gathering dust with the label 2 weeks away from dumping the band. I don't think that happens. To bury this song at track 10 on an album is madness to me. It's incredible. I'd love to know the story about why that happened.
The original release only charted in the UK, hit number 40 on the UK singles chart, but the 1994 reissue of the song, which coincided with that Greatest Hits album, reached number 9 on the Billboard US Bubbling Under Hot 100s chart. Regardless of such, it is the anthem. It's the final song he ever played live, like you said. I know I've mentioned Petty Country a lot tonight. Dierks Bentley's version that appeared on the Petty Country album also charted, hitting number 49 on the Billboard US Hot Country Songs chart, number 23 on the Billboard US Country Airplay chart, and number 38 on the Billboard Canada Country chart. And while I'm talking about cover songs, I mentioned Everclear's cover of I Won't Back Down. but Everclear also covered American Girl back in the 90s. And on episode 29, Art Alexakis from Everclear joined me for an interview. And I specifically asked him about both of those songs and his love for Tom Petty. So if you want to hear where Art Alexakis from Everclear feels about Tom Petty, I definitely recommend checking that episode out. But what a way to close Side B of the ultimate Tom Petty mixtape. Side B consists of Stop Dragging My Heart Around from Stevie Nicks' Belladonna, Cool Dry Place from Traveling Wilburys Volume 3. We didn't even mention that there never was a Volume 2, but I digress. The Wrong Thing to Do from Mudcrutch, Big Weekend from Highway Companion, I Won't Back Down from Full Moon Fever, Room at the Top from Echo, Sweet William from the Room at the Top import single or the live version from Kiss My Amps, Crawling Back to You from Wildflowers, Refugee from Damn the Torpedoes, and American Girl from Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. Head over to myweeklymixtape.com to hear all the songs we've discussed in this mix through the playlist embedded on the episode page. Well, Kevin, there is no doubt among my mind or anybody listening that I couldn't have picked a more perfect guest for this Tom Petty episode. However, you have the Tom Petty Project that you put out, your podcast. Obviously, people are not questioning your love for him after the end of this episode, but why don't you tell people where they can find the show, more about what you do over at the Tom Petty Project, and where they could listen?
Yeah, so it's the weekly podcast that digs into the entire Tom Petty catalog, song by song, album by album, in order. And then I also have conversations with musicians, fans, and then different people connected with Tom along the way. So John Scott, the guy who at MCA found that vinyl record in the bottom of a locker and said, "Hey, we should be promoting this. This is good." Had him on. He was one of my first guests. Paul Zolo, who wrote the book Conversation with Tom Petty. So I've spoken to some of those guys, plus musicians like Jeff Slate, New York musician who's does a lot of collaboration with Earl Slick, David Bowie and John Lennon's old guitarist. Jake Thistle, who's a new up-and-coming artist who's keeping the tradition of John Hyatt, Tom Petty, Jackson Browne alive. And then a new artist that I started in my Artist Conversation series, Amelia McLean, who's going to be putting out her album within the next 2 or 3 months. And I think that she could be a big hitter in world music for a long time. So I've got, 190 some episodes. I started out with Rocking Around With You, was on the August 18th, 2021. It's been going for just over 3 years. I'm having a great time. And you can come find me on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, and YouTube at The Tom Petty Project, or on Twitter at Tom Petty Project. I'd love to have you along for the ride.
Well, Kevin, I think it's safe to say that you and I just scratched the surface of Tom's musical legacy here. So I hope that you would consider coming back for a Volume 2 episode sometime down the road, because tonight has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining me on My Weekly Mixtape.
Anytime, man. Thanks for having me. And like I said to you before we started recording, you got to come over and be on the Tom Petty Project, because I think we've got a good 2-3 hours we could chat about Tom for, right? Easily.
Oh my God, yeah. Just mark it down. I'm in. I can't wait. Just let me know when. And to those listening, remember, you can find My Weekly Mixtape on almost all the social media haunts at My Weekly Mixtape. You can also head to myweeklymixtape.com to check out the full catalog of My Weekly Mixtape episodes. And if you like what you're hearing on the show, you can help me out by either telling a friend, leaving the show a 5-star review wherever you're tuning in, or becoming a Patreon mixtaper at patreon.com/My Weekly Mixtape. There you can enjoy ad-free episodes of the show, gain early access to upcoming episodes, chime in on future topics, become a guest curator, and so much more. That's all for this week. Thanks again for listening, and until next time, enjoy the tunes.